Hi guys, welcome to another movie crew review. Today we'll be reviewing A Complete Unknown.
Starring Timothee Chalamet, Elle, Ed Norton, and Monica Barbaro, we follow Bob Dylan from 1961 to 1965 as he comes to New York and starts folk singing, becomes major in the scene in the course of 2 years, and then turns his back on it to become a rock and roll star. So today we're going to get into the review, and Cameron is going to start us off.
Yeah, as a biopic, it fell a bit short for me as being a big major movie extravaganza, but being a musical fan, like anything to do with music, I tend to enjoy a lot, and just to get knowledge about Bob Dylan and how he sort of went through the phase of being this folk superstar and then wanting to do his own thing and doing what he wanted to do. It was great for me to watch and observe on the film, but it just lacked any sort of big moment for me in the film, other than obviously the infamous moment or the famous moment where he goes electric in the big folk festival. But other than that, just the story, it felt very samey throughout the whole film. I think all the portrayals were done really well. Timothee Chalamet did a great job, I think, of Bob Dylan. He really captured it and sort of acted the way he would, and yeah, and just the portrayal of him. I think it's hard to follow a character like Bob Dylan because he's so carefree. He doesn't really care as long as he's doing what he wants to do. He doesn't really give a F. So it's hard to back that sort of main character, if you want to describe it as that. And that's where it just fell short for me. But I did enjoy watching those times and following him through those steps, but just, yeah, it fell short for me as a film. John?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I found that, yes, Timothee Chalamet did a great job as the Bob Dylan character. He's a good actor where you watch him and you really forget that he's portraying an actor portraying a character, and you get into the character that he's portraying. So he does a good job of the singing in the film, so it was all live sung. So him and Monica Barbaro did a really good job singing all their parts, and he had a very Bob Dylan-esque sound to him. So I think he did that really, really well. And I think that to do all the music recorded live is something that's very hard, and that they pulled it off in such a good way is quite a good effort. Yeah, the story, it's another one of these like Ford versus Ferrari or Priscilla. It's like in a span of a certain time. So you're not going in there to learn about the life from cradle to grave. You're going in there mainly to learn about this one period, which is Bob Dylan coming from Minnesota to New York, becoming the top folk music star, and then abandoning it to go electric and perform arguably some of his best music after the film credits roll. So I think the story, it's done in a way that it keeps you somewhat interested, but the issue, or not so much issue, but the thing that I have a problem with is Bob Dylan, and Monica Barbaro's character describes him in the film as kind of an asshole, and through the whole film he's pretty much that selfish kind of guy, and you really see that culminate at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Where they're saying the folk music crew made you up on top, just give us one more chance and, perform for us. And he's pretty much like, nah, I'm not even going to bother. I'm not going to do it. And so you can see he's pretty much whatever way he wants to go, he goes. And you can understand that from an artistic point of view, but the film really doesn't sugarcoat it. It really does make it look like, Bob Dylan is his main character. And,
Yeah.
He's just doing whatever he wants. Whoever he pisses off is just collateral damage in the end. And you kind of see that with Ed Norton's character. He takes him under his wing, brings him up to all the clubs, makes him bigger than what he is. And in terms of Ed Norton was going to be the next, I guess, Bob Dylan of folk music. And then he takes Bob Dylan and knows what talent he's got, and Bob Dylan usurps him and then kind of leaves him in the wind. But there's never really like a resentment, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
because there's that scene at the end where Ed Norton was going to grab the axe and cut the cables,
Yeah.
and his wife Toshi stopped him, but it's not that kind of thing that you could see he's like in that much of a blind rage or anything that it's completely written him off. So yeah, I think Monica Barbaro is probably the character, Joan Bias, that you wouldn't really know. She was a lot more famous than him back in the day, and we discover that in the film. So that was something, not being a big fan of folk music or knowing a lot about it, something that I learnt about, and was quite interested in her performance. She's Top Gun Maverick alumni, so any Top Gun Maverick actor is a fan for me. So I think she did a really good job and sang really great. And Elle Fanning was probably the other one of four main characters in this film. And being Bob Dylan's girlfriend on and off, you see the way in which she had to deal with his selfishness and things that he doesn't even realize he's doing. Like, they're at the apartment doing that photo shoot and interview, and he's like, what are all these people doing here? And she's like, they're here for you, Bob. And it makes it sound like it's all her problem. It's just, I think him as a person in real life, it's going to be hard to find any kind of empathy for him. It's not like The Apprentice that we saw last year, where you take Roy Cohen, who is a polarizing figure, and dehumanize him. I think it's better that they kept the mystery of Bob Dylan.
Yeah, I appreciated that. Yeah.
I think if it was all explained to death, it would really kind of ruin Bob Dylan, because he really is the mystery. He's like one of the most well-known performers, but in the same cadence, nothing is known about him.
Yeah.
And it's great when Timothée Chalamet says, people make up their past, they forget what they want to, because he's pretty much like that. And you get the tiny snippets like Zimmerman being his real last name before he changed it to Dylan and things like that. But you don't really learn much. You just see like his idols in that one scene in the book that he had sent over. But I think that, overall, if you're a fan of Bob Dylan and you're in the Church of Dylan, House of Dylan, things like that, you'll quite enjoy this film. It's a good biopic in terms of being something different. That's the other thing. It's not like it's not like at the moment, biopics, they're kind of like cradle to grave in terms of like Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's like you're following the main guy from like before they break big, and then all the milestones are kind of just following a small portion of his life. So
last year we got One Love, which did the same thing. They were in a 5-year period, and we didn't, or as movie crew, we didn't really enjoy that movie or tie it. So I don't think it was something different. I think it was just done, made it feel different, but it wasn't, because I think Bob Dylan as a character is so different. That's why you think this movie is separate.
One Love film, you had a lot of flashbacks. So like you see them in the recording studio doing the first song, you see them, perfecting their music. So it's kind of interspliced throughout the film, whereas this really doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
It's really just we're getting off the car with him when he hits New York, and then we're pretty much stopping at the folk festival when he's leaving it on his motorcycle. And it's just, in my opinion, we may have seen films like this before, but in my opinion, watching it and feeling it, just something that, I don't feel like. And it's probably the character more than anything else, because they've portrayed him there's no redeeming qualities pretty much.
I got a redeeming quality from it. I think, don't be put in a box. That's the main thing. I told my wife after we watched it, I said, the one thing I learned is don't accept being put in a box, because you do you and you just roll with the punches. The game's the game, you know what I mean? And I think that's the payoff for this movie. As much as I didn't empathize with him, that's the one thing I learned from this movie is if you don't feel like you want to do folk music anymore, you want to do electric, just go do electric. Him as an artist, that's where I can really grab onto that idea of ideology of how he wants to be perceived. So I think that was the most redeeming thing for me from this movie.
Yeah, but I just, not so much in like that storyline. I meant just like in a personal, like this director did Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash film. You know how you kind of see him like go through the drugs, and then at the end he has that kind of comes back to performer, but he's clean, he's got a family and all. We never really see that for Bob, but we never really go that far. That makes sense.
Maybe because Bob didn't do any of that stuff.
Well, that's
Like,
what
he
I
was
mean.
very-
That's what I mean. They don't try and do like the Roy Cohen thing and humanize him, or.
But maybe because he didn't do anything. That's what I said to my wife as well. I go, it was such. He's done like, compared to all other biopics, it was very dull in the sense because we're used to drug overdose, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, bashings, fights, this, that, relationship sagas. When with Bob Dylan in this movie, it's pretty much, oh yeah, I cheated on you, bad luck, you know. I still love you though, and it's just like, and you just move on. So I think that was just the character he is, and I think that's why it's come across like that.
Yeah, and his rise is pretty fast compared to a lot of other like musicians where you see them like working bars and halls for like decades trying to make their break. And then he comes and like within 2 years he's pretty much like at the top of the field.
Because I suppose we don't. If you're not in the folk scene, you don't really. It's totally different compared to any other musical genre.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it was polarizing difference. But yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but I did like the Pete Seeger, Ed Norton. Because going into the film, I didn't know how much of a role he was. Like same with Johnny Cash, I didn't really know how much they were going to play into it. But I enjoyed the bits that they were in it, especially Johnny Cash. Gave something a bit different to the film. Even at the end when he, gets the acoustic guitar and hands it out, and Bob Dylan's like, yeah, okay, I'll go do one for the fans kind of thing, and let's get out of here. That was something that you could see. Maybe it's the way that he's looking at Johnny Cash as like his idol, because he seems to idolize him a bit, which is nice. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the film.
All right, we're going to give our scores?
Yeah.
John, how many harmonicas out of 10?
I'm going to give it 9 harmonicas out of 10.
Yeah, I'll give it 7.5 harmonicas out of 10. All right, guys, make sure to like, subscribe, check out our socials, and we'll catch you on the next one. Ciao.